So with just 1 week to go until America decides, how are the campaigns shaping up, and is the result a done deal? Joining me to discuss this are the Democratic strategist and former pollster for President Bill Clinton and Mayor Michael Bloomberg, Bernard Whitman, and the Republican strategist and Deputy Communications Director for the Trump-Pence presidential campaign, Brian Lanza. Thank you both very much indeed for joining us, and thank you too for being up at this ungodly hour, US time. Can I ask you first of all about Amy Coney Barrett and the fact that she now is a justice of the Supreme Court? Coincidence, of course, that the vacancy fell at this time. But Brian Lanza, do you think that has affected the campaign?
Oh, absolutely. From a number of things. I think you're going to see over time that there's going to be a lot of cases that end up in the Supreme Court if we have a tight election in Pennsylvania. And I think a 6-3 vote is critical to President Trump's reelection. So, he put his people in, and they're in place to execute if they ever end up at the court.
Bernard Whitman, what impact do you think this tussle over the seat on the Supreme Court has had on the election?
I think it's showing Americans exactly how important elections are. Elections have consequences, and we need to ensure that we elect Joe Biden and elect Democratic senators to prevent this sort of shenanigans from happening again. The American people have been quite clear. They are sick of Donald Trump. They do not want any more of Donald Trump. And the fact that Donald Trump managed to get in a third Supreme Court pick, which is almost unprecedented in 4 years, really underscores the risks of electing someone like Donald Trump. I'm hoping that the unholy alliance that the evangelicals, through the support behind Donald Trump to get Supreme Court justices on the bench, I'm hoping that alliance will be broken. They've got their Supreme Court. Let's get Trump out of the White House.
It does, Brian, seem to leave a bit of a sour taste in the mouth that the same Republican senators who blocked Barack Obama from making his appointment when an election was underway rushed through their own side.
No, listen, I think that just goes to the style of President Obama's presidency, which was lead from behind. President Obama was president for a year with Garland. He could have used his political capital to get him across the finish line. All you're seeing President Trump do is use his political capital to get his guy across the finish line. So it goes to style. Obama would send things over to Congress and hope somebody else handled it. President Trump sent it over to Congress, and he twisted arms. I mean, remember at one point you had Mitt Romney who said he wasn't going to support this nomination. You had Senator from Alaska, Murkowski, that said she wasn't going to support these. They're now supporting it. That's not an accident. That's because President Trump leaned in and pushed for his person. I mean, he's entitled to nominate. He's president for 4 years. This vacancy happened during his presidency. He made a case in the campaign that he was going to put, his, conservative type judges on the courts, and that's what the voters chose.
Well, Barack Obama was president for 8 years. But Bernard, what do you think? Do you think that there is any turning against Republican senators for the way they've behaved?
Oh, I absolutely think that the Republicans are going to lose the Senate. I think we have a chance to pick up Senate seats in Colorado and Maine, in North Carolina and Arizona, and potentially in 1 or 2 seats in Georgia. I think that the Republicans have run this race. They've run it to the end, and I think they're going to pay the price for it. I mean, it's a travesty of justice. We're going to be dealing with this conservative Supreme Court for a generation or two. And I would say to anybody out there who's thinking of not voting, elections have consequences. We must rebuke President Trump. We must rebuke the Supreme Court pick. We must ensure not only that Joe Biden is in the White House to pick any Supreme Court justices that might occur over his 4 or 8 years, but also Democratic senators to ensure that we cannot continue to put on far right judicial activist judges on the court. When this country is center-right, we have a far right-wing court, which is going to wreak havoc for generations to come.
Brian Lanza, how can the president go on tweeting that COVID is only over, we won't hear any more about it after the election, when actually America's got record infection rates and rising death rates?
I think he doesn't say it's going to disappear from the headlines. It's going to be a headline, but it's not going to be the thing that sucks up all the oxygen. I think, people look at American media right now, specifically cable television, and realize that they're putting the thumb on a scale. They're putting a thumb on a scale to get rid of President Trump, and that's not what news is supposed to be. And so what they do in these circumstances, they put the most unflattering story front and center and be that only coverage. I mean, you'd forget that, Hunter Biden's name appeared this last week with corruption tying his dad. You hardly saw any coverage of that on cable television. That is a fair story, similar to the COVID story.
Fox News, I seem to remember, which is the most watched.
What's that?
There is a cable station called Fox News, which tends to be sympathetic to the president.
They're popular for a reason. They're covering the news as they see it, and they're not trying to put the partisan bend that you see a CNN or MSNBC do. I mean, that's why Fox has their popularity, is they're calling what they see are strikes and balls as opposed to, thumb on a scale media as we see with the other networks. And I think that's the frustration you're going to have. That's the frustration that at least Republicans have with American media today.
But with all due respect, it's probably true, isn't it, that if it wasn't for COVID, Donald Trump would probably be on the way to re-election.
Absolutely.
I'm sure some other disaster. Yeah, I'm sure some other disaster would have occurred. I mean, I am deeply offended, with all due respect, to suggest that a fake story about Hunter Biden, which is being spread by Russian disinformation, is of the same concern as 230,000 Americans dead. We could get another 250,000 Americans dead before the end of the year or the end of the winter. The fact that we've had to shut down our economy, millions and millions and millions of people out of work. People are scared to leave their homes, yet they're leaving their homes to go vote. The fact that you're equating the deaths of so many people that occurred under his watch, which should disqualify President Trump from being reelected, is the same thing as a fake news story about Hunter Biden, is disgusting and despicable. And I'm really sort of offended and ashamed.
That's what they're most upset about. It's like, give it fair coverage. That's all they're asking for.
Yeah, but isn't it the case, Brian, that we haven't done well in this country, but you haven't done well in the United States handling the pandemic, and that, to a certain extent, has meant that, people are tired of the Trump show.
Yeah, listen, I think, when you look at the pandemic, there obviously have been challenges. I don't think the president, gets an A+ for his pandemic performance. But also you've got to look at the rest of the world. And I think the American voter is a little bit more sophisticated.
A+, because he gives himself an A+, doesn't he?
Well, he may give himself an A+. I don't give him an A+. But I like him to just, call balls and strikes as I see them. But at the end of the day, the president, his policies here in the U.S., obviously there's some surge going on, but you also look at the more restrictive policies all over the world, whether it's the UK, whether it's the EU, whether it's Germany. They have very restrictive policies, and they're going through a second surge too. So it's not like the American public are sitting back and saying the US is the only one suffering from a second surge because of President Trump's leadership on this. There are other countries that have a more restrictive policy that are also going through a second surge. So what that says to the American voter is we just don't know how to deal with this completely. Countries have done extreme cases and are going through a second surge. The U.S. has done a moderate and going through a surge. And, it's just there's a lot of undecided questions. I just don't believe the American voter looks at that and says Trump's style is unique and it's leading to an outlier of what the rest of the world looks like, especially after the surges that are taking place in Europe as we speak.
What would, Bernard, what would Joe Biden do about COVID that Donald Trump isn't doing?
Well, first of all, it's quite obvious. Follow the science. Simple things like wearing masks could save hundreds and hundreds of thousands of lives. This has been well documented for months. President Donald Trump effectively refuses to wear a mask, flaunts the fact that he doesn't wear a mask, makes fun of people wearing masks. And the fact is, we have 4% of the world's populations, I think 20% of the world's COVID deaths. We haven't just mishandled this. The lack of national leadership, the lack of belief in science, the lack of any national strategy has caused hundreds of thousands of Americans to unnecessarily die and millions more to be thrown out of work. So the idea that somehow Donald Trump is not doing that well on COVID and, basically akin to where the other countries are is simply not true. We are dealing with COVID in the worst possible way and have, I think, the worst record of handling this of any state, of any country in the entire world.
And according to the opinion polls, it does appear both nationally and in swing states, Joe Biden has a lead at the moment. Bernard, what are you worried could go wrong between now and polling day?
Oh, look, I think a lot of things could go wrong, including voter suppression, voter intimidation. I'm far more concerned about Donald Trump's ability to steal the election through the courts or through voter suppression than I am about his winning. 65 million people have already voted this morning. That's more than half, almost the number of people who voted last time. Voting among Democrats is way, 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 way up. Voting among young people is way up. In states that track party registration, almost twice as many Democrats have voted as Republicans. But I take nothing for granted. We need to ensure that everybody shows up on Election Day and all those votes are counted. Anything could happen. Right now, I think Joe Biden is well positioned, but we cannot lay our guard down because Donald Trump has shown a unique ability to try to use all levers of power, legal and illegal, to claim victory.
And Brian, the president needs some sort of big surprise, doesn't he, to get over the line now?
No, listen, look at this morning. A poll came out, Insider Advantage poll came out in Pennsylvania that showed President up by 2 points. Pennsylvania is a state that, whoever wins Pennsylvania is going to be the president. So I think, the polls show that the race is closing, and specifically in swing states, even if it's not nationally. That's where we were 4 years ago. I mean, I think, if I'm sitting here 4 years ago, I was a little bit more worried about Hillary because she had such a superior organization. Just competing against them was its own difficult challenge, and Biden doesn't have that. He certainly doesn't have the energy that a Hillary historic race would have meant. Listen, I give our, 7 days out, the way the polls look, I put ourselves in a good position. You can't ever count out the president. It's just the way it is. Myself, I've counted him out from time to time. I thought Mueller was going to be the death shot of his presidency, and he made him strong from it. So, we're
going to have to leave it there. I know we'll be revisiting this. Thank you both very much indeed again. Well, staying with the U.S. election.